Picture this. A woman. 2 a.m. A utility room in the most expensive, most dangerous house in Seoul. She is not supposed to be crying. She never cries. She is the strong one. She has always been the strong one. But tonight the money doesn't add up. Her brother needs surgery she cannot afford. And she is in a foreign country, completely alone, and there is nobody, not one single person, she can fall apart in front of. So she falls apart alone. What she doesn't know is that the most feared man in Seoul is standing in the doorway, watching. Kang Seo-jin, the man whose silence makes grown men tremble, the man who has not felt anything on purpose in 8 years, looks at this woman crying in his utility room. And something in him that has been frozen for a very long time quietly breaks. He doesn't comfort her. He doesn't know how. He gets a glass of warm water, sets it beside her, says nothing, leaves. By morning, her brother's surgery is paid for. No note, no name. And that one silent, anonymous, 3 a.m. act of a man who claimed he felt nothing, is where this love story begins. This is the story of Emma Osei and Kang Seo-jin, a Nigerian maid and a Korean crime boss. Two people who were extraordinarily good at being alone, and what it cost them, and what it gave them, to stop. This is soft for her only. Before the story goes any further, if Emma and Seo-jin already have you by the throat in 60 seconds, just wait. Hit that like button right now, not at the end, because this story deserves to be seen and the algorithm needs to know you are here. Subscribe, because this is not the only story like this on this channel, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. And comment below, are you Team Emma or Team Seo-jin? Do you relate more to the person who jokes through everything, or the person who goes completely cold when they are scared? Tell me. Every single comment gets read. Now, back to Seoul. Let's start with Emma. Because before anyone can understand what happens in this story, they need to understand who she is. Not just the surface of her, the competence, the humor, the natural hair styled differently every single week, because it is the one thing in her life that belongs entirely to her. They need to understand what she is carrying. Emma Osei is 26 years old, and she has been the strong one since she was 17. That was the year her father's business collapsed quietly, in increments, the way financial ruin always happens, not in one dramatic moment, but in a series of smaller ones, each one manageable on its own, collectively unsurvivable. The family did not talk about it directly. They talked around it. Emma listened to the spaces between the words and understood everything. Her mother cried at night when she thought no one could hear. Emma could always hear. She lay in her bed listening and decided, with the particular clarity of a 17-year-old who loves her family more than she loves herself, that she would not add her own weight to what they were already carrying. So she picked up humor like a shield, and she never put it down. She made them laugh at the dinner table when the food was less than it used to be. She made her younger brother Kofi laugh when he asked questions she didn't have good answers for. She made her mother smile on the mornings when smiling looked like the hardest thing in the world. She was very good at it. She became better at it every year. By the time she is 26, Emma Osei can walk into any room and make it lighter. She can defuse tension with a sentence. She can survive an awkward silence, an unkind comment, a difficult day, and make it sound like a comedy special by the time she tells it back to you. She narrates her own suffering with such sharp, specific humor that people laugh before they realize she just said something heartbreaking. Kofi needs surgery. Not a small procedure, a real one, the kind with a long recovery and a longer bill, the kind that requires confirmed funding before the hospital will schedule the operating room. Emma has been managing it, stretching every naira, every one, doing the math in the margins of every quiet moment. The math does not work. Not yet. Not in time. She applies for the overseas work visa because it is the only calculation that comes out right. A live-in position in Seoul. Full room and board included, which means every one she earns goes directly to Kofi's account. She finds the agency, fills out the paperwork, passes the interview, and tells her family she is going on an adventure. She does not tell Kofi she is terrified. She does not tell her mother that leaving feels like removing a piece of herself and leaving it on the doorstep. She makes them laugh instead. She has always made them laugh instead. It is the most loving thing she knows how to do. It is also the loneliest. She lands in Seoul on a gray Tuesday morning with one suitcase, 3 months of savings in her account, a phone full of Kofi's hospital updates, and the kind of nerve that only comes from having absolutely no alternative. The city is enormous through the taxi window. Neon and gray and nothing like home. She watches it slide past, and her internal monologue. And Emma always has an internal monologue. It is essentially its own character. Says, okay, this is fine. Big city. New adventure. People live here. Some of them seem happy. This is completely fine. The drive gets quieter the further in they go. The streets get wider and emptier and more expensive looking. The agency had been unusually tight-lipped about the nature of the household. Emma is beginning to understand why. The house is a mansion in the quietest district of Seoul, set back from the road behind a gate and a garden that is maintained with the precision of something that has never once been allowed to grow wild. Marble everything. Security cameras at every angle she looks. Guards at the gate who examine her arrival paperwork without expression and wave her through without a word. She counts 4 cameras before she reaches the front door. The housekeeper meets her there. A small, elderly woman with the quiet authority of someone who has outlasted everyone who has ever tried to diminish her. She introduces herself as Mrs. Park, and she gives Emma a tour in clipped, efficient Korean that Emma follows at approximately 60% comprehension, nodding at the 40% she misses and filing it away to figure out later. The kitchen, the laundry, the rooms she is responsible for, the rooms she is not to enter without being asked, the schedule, the expectations. Then they pass a hallway lined with portraits. Family portraits going back 3 generations. Men with the same jawline, the same composed expression, the same eyes that seem to be perpetually evaluating something invisible. Emma stops at the most recent one. The man in it is younger than the others, barely 30 when it was taken, maybe, and he is looking directly at the painter, or the camera, or whoever was recording him, with the expression of someone who has made a decision about the world and is not interested in revising it. That's him, Mrs. Park says simply, and keeps walking. Emma catches her first real glimpse of Kang Seo-jin 2 hours later, from across the width of his study. He is on a phone call, standing at a floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at Seoul with the expression of a man who owns the view and finds it insufficient. He is tall, composed in the specific way that is not calm, but is rather the result of every natural impulse being held in check so consistently that the holding has become its own kind of posture. He speaks into the phone in a low voice that doesn't carry. He does not look at her when she collects the coffee tray from his desk. She is furniture. She is a scheduling note. She is a new variable in the household roster that he has registered and filed. He looks at the ceiling when she enters the room. Emma notices. She files it away. There is nothing interesting on that ceiling. She checked. The first 3 weeks established the world and its rules. Emma learns the rhythms of the house the way she has always learned difficult environments, by watching, by listening to the spaces between the words, by being excellent at her work because she has too much dignity to be otherwise. She learns Korean faster than anyone expects because she is not willing to be lost in a place she is committed to surviving. She greets the guards by name inside the first week. All of them. She learns their schedules and their preferences and which ones will crack a smile if she times a comment correctly. She rearranges the kitchen storage on a Wednesday because the previous system makes no logical sense and it is bothering her. She reorganizes the filing system in the study on a Saturday because it is, and she tells Mrs. Park this with complete sincerity, giving chaos and not in a fun way. Nobody asked her to do any of this. She does it anyway, because Emma Osei does not know how to be anywhere without making it better. Even when the anywhere is the most dangerous house in Seoul. Even when the man of the house looks at the ceiling whenever she enters a room. Even when she is so homesick she can feel it in her back teeth on Sunday evenings after she hangs up from Kofi, after the bright voice finally goes off and the real silence arrives. She does not let anyone see the Sunday evenings. She puts on music. She learns a new Korean word. She tells herself she is fine. She is always fine. Somebody has to be. Now let's talk about him. Because Kang Seo-jin requires explanation, not defense. Explanation. There is a difference. He is 32 years old, and he runs the Kang empire the way other men breathe. Automatically, without pleasure, because stopping is not an option he has ever allowed himself to consider. Underground networks. Legitimate businesses used as covers. Half of Seoul's most powerful figures either in his debt or in his pocket. He inherited all of it at 24 on the night his father was shot in the marble foyer of this very house. And he made a decision standing over the body of the man he loved most in the world. A decision that 8-year-old Seo-jin, who used to chase his father through these same hallways laughing, would not have recognized as something a person could choose. He decided to stop feeling things. Not loudly, not dramatically, the way Seo-jin does everything, with precision and without ceremony. He looked at his father on the marble floor, and he understood, with the cold clarity of grief becoming strategy, that feeling things had made his father visible, that love had made him reachable, that the warmth his father carried openly, the warmth Seo-jin had always admired, had always wanted to inherit, had been exactly the thing his enemies used to find the angle that killed him. So he cut it out, piece by piece. Every instinct that made him soft, every impulse that made him human in the wrong moment. He replaced them with strategy, with calculation, with the kind of composure that people in his world began to describe, over 8 years, as coldness, as cruelty, as the particular blankness of a man who simply does not care. It is not cruelty. It has never been cruelty. But it looks exactly like it from the outside, and Seo-jin has spent 8 years understanding that looking like it is just as effective. He does not laugh. He has a look, a barely there shift at the corner of his mouth, so small that most people in his world have never seen it, that the handful of people who have worked closest to him for longest have started privately calling it. As in, he did the thing. He almost smiled. It happens rarely enough that each occurrence gets noted and quietly marveled at, the way astronomers note a comet, something that passes through the sky so infrequently that witnessing it feels like it means something. He has no friends. He has associates and subordinates, and Mrs. Park, who is the only person alive who speaks to him like he is still 12 years old, who scolds him for not eating enough and tells him when his collar is crooked and looks at him sometimes with an expression that contains the entire history of watching someone choose loneliness over and over and still hoping they will eventually choose differently. He tolerates this from her. He would not tolerate it from anyone else. But Mrs. Park was there before the decision. She knew the version of him that laughed in hallways. She is perhaps the only remaining evidence that that version ever existed. And then Emma Osei arrives with one suitcase and rearranges his filing system. He catalogs her the way he catalogs everything. Thoroughly, efficiently, and with the particular unease of encountering a variable he cannot fully predict. She is not afraid of him. This is unusual enough that he notes it in the first 10 seconds. Not the performed fearlessness of someone trying to impress him. He knows what that looks like, and it is exhausting. But the genuine unimpressedness of someone who has already survived things that required her full courage and has none left over for a man who simply looks at ceilings. She greets his guards by name within a week. She rearranges his kitchen on a Wednesday without asking permission, and it is objectively better. She leaves a note about the filing system written in careful, slightly incorrect Korean that manages to convey both her competence and her personality in 11 words. He reads the note 3 times. He will not be examining why. What he is willing to examine, in the controlled and strategic way he examines everything, is the operational reality of her presence in his house. She is visible. She makes herself visible, not recklessly, not arrogantly, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own worth and does not see any reason to make themselves smaller to accommodate spaces that were built without them in mind. This is a problem. In his world, visibility is vulnerability. The more a person is seen, the more they can be used. He understands this with his whole architecture. He keeps her at a careful distance. He looks at the ceiling when she enters a room because looking at her directly requires a level of neutrality he is not entirely certain he can maintain, and he will not be uncertain in his own house. He does not think about why looking at her requires effort. He absolutely does not think about the note. 3 weeks pass this way, both of them performing their respective versions of normal, both of them building their walls higher in the presence of someone who, for the first time in a long time, makes those walls feel like they require more effort than they should. And then it is a Thursday evening, and the money does not add up for Emma, and the surgery falls through. She holds it together through dinner preparation, through the evening clean, through Mrs. Park's quiet goodnight. She holds it together through the walk down the corridor and past the study where the light is still on under the door because Seo-jin does not sleep in the normal sense of the word. She holds it together all the way to the utility room at the far end of the ground floor, the one no one uses after 9, the one with the smell of cleaning supplies and old stone and the particular absence of anything that requires her to be anything. And then she closes the door behind her, slides down the wall to the floor, and falls completely apart. Silent tears. The shaking kind. The kind that have been building for weeks behind the laughter and the competence, and the "this is fine," the "I'm fine," the "somebody has to be fine," and it has always been her. She is not performing sadness. She is not asking for anything from anyone. She is simply a woman, alone, in a foreign country, in a stranger's house, carrying more than one person should be asked to carry, and tonight the weight is simply too much. She does not hear the door open. Seo-jin was not supposed to be in this part of the house. His insomnia walks have a route, through the upper floors, through the east wing, back to his office. He opened the utility room door without thinking, out of the vague habit of checking the entire ground floor before he allows himself to sit down for what passes as rest in his life. He finds her. He stands in the doorway, and he sees Emma Osei on the floor of his utility room in the dark, and for a long moment, 3 seconds, maybe 4, which is an enormous amount of time in the internal experience of a man who processes things very quickly, he simply does not move. Because something has just happened to him that 8 years of careful, systematic emotional excavation did not prepare him for. Her tears have gotten through. Not metaphorically, not strategically, simply, cleanly, completely through. Past the architecture and the composure and the 8 years of replacement and the decision he made on the marble floor at 24. She is crying, and she doesn't know he is watching, and she is not crying for effect. She is crying the way people cry when they are completely alone, and something in him that he had genuinely believed was no longer operable is not only still there, but is currently responding to the sight of her with a physical ache that he has no category for. He does not know what to do with this. He stands in the doorway for 4 seconds that feel like much longer. Then he does the only thing he can. He goes to the small cabinet on the left side of the room where the staff keep their things, and he finds a glass, and he fills it with warm water from the tap, and he sets it on the shelf within her reach. Quietly, without touching her, without speaking, without doing the thing he does not know how to do, which is acknowledge out loud that he sees her, that she matters, that whatever this is he is feeling right now is real and enormous, and completely outside the agreed-upon terms of how he has chosen to live. He leaves. He walks back through the ground floor. He does not take his usual route. He goes directly to his office, and he sits at his desk, and he does not open the report in front of him. He sits with his hands flat on the desk, and he thinks about the glass of warm water, and whether it was enough, and whether anything is ever enough, and what it means that he made the calculation without calculating. At 3 a.m., he picks up his phone. He makes a call to his financial contact, a man who handles the kind of transfers that require no paperwork and leave no obvious trail. He gives him Kofi's hospital account number. Emma mentioned the hospital once in a phone call he was not supposed to be close enough to hear, and he filed the name away because he files everything away, and this is the first time he has understood why he does that, and he gives him the full amount plus a buffer for the recovery period. He says, "No name, no note. Handle it tonight." He puts the phone down. He sits in his office. The city outside his window is quiet and dark, and he does not move for a long time. By morning, the surgery is confirmed. Kofi will be okay. Emma does not know yet. He will not be there when she finds out. He will not acknowledge, when she does find out, that it was him, because acknowledging it would require him to explain the 3 a.m. phone call, and the financial transfer, and the fact that he heard her crying through a closed door, and none of that fits inside the architecture of who he is supposed to be. He tells himself this is the end of it. A single act. A fixable problem that has been fixed. It will not be examined further. 2 days later, Emma traces the funding back to him with the focused precision of a woman who is good at math and does not accept loose ends. She walks into his office past 2 bodyguards who have never seen anyone do this voluntarily, and their hands move to their sides in automatic response before they process that she is carrying a piece of paper and nothing else. She crosses the room with her chin up and something in her eyes that is part fury and part something else she is absolutely not going to let fall, and she places a handwritten repayment schedule on his desk. 12 months. Every cent accounted for with interest, in 2 columns, in handwriting that is more precise than most people would manage when they are angry. She stands there with her arms crossed and waits. Seo-jin looks at the paper. He looks at her. He says nothing. In his experience, saying nothing is the most powerful response available in most situations. It does not work the way it usually works. She does not fill the silence with retreat. She fills it with words. I don't need a charity case, she says. Her voice is steady. This costs her something, and he can see that it does, but she is not going to let it show more than it already has. I need a salary, and I need you to let me handle my family. Your brother needed surgery, he says. And I was handling it. You were crying alone in a utility room at 2 a.m. The silence after that is enormous. Her jaw tightens. Something moves through her expression, a flash of something raw and blazing beneath the composure. That was a private moment. My house, he says simply. My tears, she fires back. He picks up the repayment schedule. He studies it with the same attention he gives to financial documents that actually matter to the running of his empire. He sets it down. It was a gift, he says. I don't accept repayment for gifts. Emma stares at him for a long moment. Then it wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. And I will pay everyone. She turns. She walks out. The door does not slam. She closes it with the particular control of someone who very much wants to slam it and has decided not to give him the satisfaction. Seo-jin looks at the repayment schedule for a long time after she is gone. Then he opens his desk drawer, and he puts it inside. Not in the file for administrative matters. Not in the pile for things to be discarded. In the drawer where he keeps the things that are his. Where he keeps the note about the filing system. He will never tell her this. He closes the drawer. He opens the report from Busan. He does not read a single word of it. What happens next is the part of the story that ruins you. Not because it is dramatic. Not because anything explodes, or anyone shouts, or the world cracks open in a way that is visible from the outside. It ruins you because it is so quiet, and so specific, and so painfully, recognizably real. The kind of real that makes you set your phone down for a second and think about someone you know, or someone you are, or something you have been carrying for longer than you meant to. A guard is dismissed 3 days after the repayment schedule conversation. He made a comment to Emma in the corridor. Nothing that would register as significant to most people in the house. Just the particular tone of someone who has decided that a person's position makes them available for disrespect. Emma did not respond to it. She tilted her head slightly, the way she does when she is filing something away for later, and she kept walking. Seo-jin was not in the corridor. He heard about it through the network of attention he keeps over his household the way other people keep smoke detectors. Not because he expects fire, but because he needs to know the moment something begins to burn. He calls his head of security that evening. He says, the guard on East rotation is gone by morning. No explanation is given. None is asked for. The man is simply gone. Emma finds out through Mrs. Park, who tells her the way Mrs. Park tells everything. Quietly, with the precise economy of someone who understands that some information is more important for what it implies than for what it states. Emma is quiet for a moment after Mrs. Park finishes. Then she goes back to what she was doing. She does not say anything about it to anyone. But she stands in the kitchen later that evening, and she adds the dismissal to the list she has been keeping in the back of her mind. The list she is not officially keeping, because officially she is not reading anything into any of this. And she stands there for a long moment looking at the wall. He noticed. He was not supposed to notice. Nobody in a house like this, with a man like that, notices what happens to the maid in the corridor. And yet, the kitchen is restocked that same week. She opens the cabinet on a Wednesday morning and finds ingredients she has not seen since she left Nigeria. The specific pepper blend her mother uses, the kind of stock cube that doesn't exist in standard Korean grocery stores, dried crayfish in a sealed container that someone sourced from somewhere with enough effort that the sourcing itself is a sentence. She mentioned these things once, in passing, to Mrs. Park, in a conversation about food that she did not think anyone else was close enough to hear. She stands in front of the open cabinet for a long time. Then she makes the recipe. She makes it the way her mother taught her, with the specific measurements that are not measurements at all but handfuls and instincts and the smell of something becoming what it is supposed to be. The kitchen fills with a smell that is so precisely home that she has to put the spoon down for a moment and breathe through it. She calls Kofi that evening. Her voice is bright and light and full of exaggerated stories about Seoul that make him laugh. She does not tell him about the cabinet. She does not tell him about the list she is keeping in the back of her mind. She tells him she is fine. She is always fine. But she stands in her room after the call, and she thinks about the guard who is gone and the spices that appeared and the insomnia walks that always seem to pass whatever room she is in. She has timed it. She is not imagining it. And she thinks about the warm water glass in the dark of the utility room and the surgery funded by a name that was never written on anything. She knows what this is. She is too sharp not to know. And knowing is precisely the problem, because knowing makes it real, and real makes it something she has to decide what to do with. She decides to try to make him do the corner of the mouth thing. This is Emma's version of reaching out, indirect, deniable, disguised as something else entirely, which is how she reaches for everything she actually wants. She gives herself a private mission. Make Kang Seo-jin produce the almost smile at least once before the end of the week. She tries 3 different approaches. The first one, a perfectly timed observation about the way one of his senior staff walks into every meeting like he has personally been offended by the door, produces nothing. The second one, a comment about the extraordinary seriousness with which the household approaches the procurement of green tea, gets a look that she cannot entirely interpret, but which is not nothing. The third one, delivered while she is mopping a corridor and he is walking past with 3 people trailing him holding tablets, in the middle of what is clearly an important operational conversation, at a moment when he could not possibly be less available for being entertained, lands. She does not even look at him when she delivers it. She just says, to nobody in particular, but at the precise volume he can hear. Day 47. The ceiling continues to be uninteresting. No updates. He does the thing. The corner of the mouth. The almost. Gone within half a second. Gone before any of the 3 people trailing him could have registered it. Gone back to the composed blankness that is his default expression and his armor and his primary operational tool. Emma sees it. She pumps her fist once, privately, facing the wall. Then she picks up her mop and goes back to work like nothing happened. He thinks about it for the rest of the day. He will not be examining this either. But the space between them is different after that. There is something tentative and enormous growing in it. Something that neither of them has named, and both of them are managing with the focused intensity of people who understand that naming a thing makes it real and real things can be taken away. They orbit each other carefully. She asks him questions he clearly doesn't want to answer and then answers them herself when he doesn't respond, which she has learned produces the corner of the mouth thing more reliably than almost anything else. He appears in rooms she is in without acknowledged reason. He remembers things about her she has never told him twice. And then one morning she sets his coffee down without being asked exactly how he takes it, which she knows because she pays attention, because she has always paid attention to the people she is quietly, inconveniently beginning to care about. And she looks at the ceiling above his desk, and she says, "You don't have to pretend I don't exist, you know. I've noticed you look at the ceiling whenever I walk into a room. The ceiling is not that interesting. I have checked it thoroughly." Seo-jin looks at her for a long, measured moment. The kind of look that makes most people take a step back. Emma does not take a step back. "Do your job," he says. Nothing more. She tilts her head. There is the flash of something in her eyes. Not hurt. Not yet. Something more like the expression of a person who has been handed a disappointing but entirely predictable response and has decided to refuse to be defeated by it. "That's actually a little rude," she says. She picks up her cleaning supplies. "I'm going to pretend you said good morning because I need to believe in something." She walks out. He stares at the doorway for 11 seconds. He counted. The second clash comes a week later and it hits harder because both of them are past the point of pretending the first one didn't matter. Emma has started to see the pattern clearly now. The small kindnesses, the guard, the spices, the insomnia walks. And she has run out of patience for performing like she hasn't. She corners him in the corridor outside his office with the terrifying directness of a woman who has run out of performance entirely. "Why do you do that?" she asks. He doesn't look up from the document in his hand. "Do what?" "The thing," she says, "where you act like I'm invisible and then quietly make my life easier and then go back to acting like I'm invisible. Because it's confusing. And I don't like being confused. I like knowing where I stand. So just tell me, what am I to you? Because the mixed signals are giving me emotional whiplash, and I'm already tired." He finally looks at her. Something moves behind his eyes, the briefest disruption in the stillness, like a stone dropped in water that is trying very hard to stay flat. Something that knows. something that has known for longer than it is willing to admit. Your staff, he says. Emma stares at him for a long moment. The humor doesn't come. The deflection doesn't come. She simply looks at him with the expression of someone receiving information they already knew and had been hoping was wrong. Right, she says quietly. And then, softer, almost to herself, in the specific tone of someone closing a door they had left open by mistake. Cool. Yeah, that's what I thought. She leaves. He sits in his office for 2 hours and does not touch anything on his desk. He said the wrong thing. He knows he said the wrong thing. He said it on purpose because the right thing, the true thing, the thing that moves behind his eyes when he looks at her, is not something he is allowed to say. It is not something a man in his position can say to a woman in hers without making her a target. He said it to protect her. She will not know this for a very long time. But the thing that destroys him most is not that he said it. It is that she believed him, that she looked at him with that expression and decided to take him at his word. He asked her to believe the worst version of what he is, and she did, because she is a person who does not beg to be chosen. She simply accepts the answer she is given and carries it with the same quiet dignity she carries everything else. He sits in the cold office for 2 hours. The report from Busan is still unread on his desk. And then his underboss comes to him. A man who has been with him since the beginning. Elegant, calculating, deeply invested in maintaining the existing power structure exactly as it is. He comes with information dressed as casual observation, the way dangerous things always come. He sits across from Seo-jin's desk and he looks at his hands, and he says, very pleasantly, I've noticed the boss has developed some preferences regarding the domestic staff. Interesting development. The room is completely still. Seo-jin's face gives nothing. His face never gives anything. But he hears the sentence beneath the sentence with complete clarity. The threat that is not yet a threat. The identification of a weakness that has been spotted and named and filed by someone whose entire operational function is to find and exploit exactly this kind of leverage. Emma has been seen. By the wrong person. At the wrong time. That evening, Seo-jin comes home to the sound of laughter from the kitchen. He stops in the corridor outside the kitchen door, and he listens for a moment before he enters. Emma is teaching Mrs. Park a recipe from home. Something with the pepper blend from the cabinet. Something that fills the kitchen with a warmth and a smell that does not belong in this house, and yet seems, in this moment, to be more at home in it than anything that has been here for the past 8 years. Mrs. Park is laughing. Not her polite, careful housekeeper's smile. Actually laughing, with her whole small body, at something Emma has just said that he did not arrive in time to hear. And Emma is laughing too, real and full and completely unguarded. The version of her laugh that only happens when she has forgotten to perform it. Something in him goes very still. Not the strategic stillness. The other kind. She is too visible. She is too present. She is too his, in a way that people are now noticing and that his underboss has already named. And the man who spent 8 years learning that love makes people reachable, and reachable means vulnerable, does the only thing his architecture knows how to do with something this dangerous. He walks through the kitchen door, and the laughter stops. This isn't a social gathering, he says. His voice is the temperature of the marble floors. The eyes he uses on men who owe him money. Flat, empty, containing nothing that could be called human feeling. Mrs. Park has duties. You have duties. This kitchen is not a place for whatever this is. Emma blinks. We were just cooking. I don't pay you to bond with my staff. He does not raise his voice. He never raises his voice. The words land harder for being delivered quietly. You are here to work. If you find that insufficient, the contract has a termination clause. I suggest you review it. The silence is catastrophic. Mrs. Park looks at the floor. Emma looks at Seo-jin for a long, long moment. The joke does not come this time. There is nothing funny to find. She looks at him the way she looked at him when he said your staff. Except this time it is worse, because this time there is no hurt in it. There is something more final than hurt. The expression of someone who has just watched a door close all the way. Understood, she says. Her voice is completely, perfectly even. Sir. That last word lands like a period at the end of a sentence that used to be a question. She leaves without another word. Mrs. Park looks at him. She is the only person in his life who does not look away when he is like this. She looks at him with the expression she has been wearing since he was 12 years old, and making choices that cost him more than he understood. That girl, the old woman says quietly, has done nothing but good in this house. Seo-jin says nothing. He stands in the kitchen alone for a long time after. The pot on the stove is still warm. She comes to work the next day, and she is perfect. Not the Emma who names guards and reorganizes filing systems and makes the corner of his mouth do the thing. Not the Emma who talks to everyone in the house like they are human beings worth knowing. Who hums in the kitchen when she thinks nobody is listening. Who narrates her own existence like a comedy special and makes Mrs. Park laugh with her whole small body. Not that Emma. This Emma is professional, efficient, invisible in all the ways she never was before. She moves through the house like a shadow of the operational function she was hired to perform, cleaning, restocking, completing every task on the list with the focused competence of someone who has decided that competence is the only thing she is here to offer. She does not make jokes. She does not talk to the guards. She does not hum. She does not reorganize anything that was not specifically assigned to her. She does not knock on doors that were not already opened for her. She does not look at him, not with anger, not with hurt. She looks through him the way people look at furniture, registering his presence as an obstacle to navigate around, not as a person requiring acknowledgement. It is exactly what he asked for. It is the worst thing that has ever happened to him. The absence of her actual self in the house is loud in a way Seo-jin did not know a silence could be. He has lived in silence for 8 years. He constructed the silence deliberately, stone by stone, and he has always found it functional. This silence is different. This silence has the specific shape of something that used to be there and isn't anymore. The negative space of a sound, the outline of a warmth. He walks past the kitchen at the time she usually hums, and the quiet from inside it lands on him like a physical thing. He finds her repayment schedule in his desk drawer on the 3rd day. The first installment arrived in the household accounts on time. Exact. Down to the last one, no rounding, no approximation. The mathematical precision of someone who will not allow even the arithmetic of her repayment to be interpreted as casual. He sits with the schedule in his hands, and he thinks about the way she said, "Sir." The formality she handed him like a closed door. The specific quality of her voice when she is performing a version of herself she does not actually want to be. He knows that voice. He has been performing a version of himself he does not actually want to be for 8 years. He recognized it in her the first week and then spent every week after that pretending he hadn't. He asked for distance. He has it. Every inch of it. It is the most effective thing he has ever done. It is also the only thing he has ever done that he cannot find a single strategic justification for. Because the distance is not protecting her. His underboss has already seen what she is to him, and distance now does nothing to erase that visibility. He hurt her for nothing. He dismantled the warmest thing that has happened in this house in 8 years for nothing. And he knows this. He sits with it in his office for 2 hours with the repayment schedule in his hands and the unread report from Busan on his desk, and the particular quality of a silence that has the shape of Emma Osei in it. He puts the schedule back in the drawer. He closes it. He does not open the Busan report. For days after the kitchen, Emma drags herself to work with a fever that has no business being ignored. It started the night before as the vague wrongness of a body beginning to protest, the ache behind the eyes, the heaviness in the joints, the specific heat of something building. She takes paracetamol with her morning tea and tells herself it is fine. She has a schedule. The house has a schedule. She does not have the psychological architecture to call in sick, because calling in sick requires the belief that her own body's needs are legitimate enough to inconvenience other people's plans, and Emma has never been able to locate that belief in herself no matter how many times she has needed it. She makes it through the morning on sheer determination and the particular stubbornness of a woman who has been the strong one for too long to know how to be anything else. She restocks the East Wing linen cupboard. She cleans the formal dining room. She starts on the long corridor on the 2nd floor, mopping in the steady rhythmic way that usually helps her think, and she is 3/4 of the way down it when the floor tilts. Not dramatically, just a small, significant tilt. The kind that comes from a fever that has been climbing quietly all morning and has now reached a height that the body registers as a problem. She puts one hand on the wall. She breathes. She tells herself, 2 more sections. Just 2 more sections, and then the morning schedule is done and she can sit down. Stop. She turns. Seo-jin is at the end of the corridor. He is not in a meeting. She can tell because he is not wearing the jacket he wears to meetings, just the shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, which she has privately catalogued as the closest he gets to casual. He is looking at her with an expression she cannot immediately read because it is not one of the expressions she has learned from him. It is not the flat operational blankness. It is not the ceiling look. It is something she has not seen before, something that looks uncomfortably like the expression of a person who is trying very hard to appear undisturbed and is failing. "I'm fine," she says. Automatic. Reflexive. The answer she gives to every question that has anything to do with how she actually is. "You are not fine," he says, quietly, without room for negotiation. He crosses the corridor in the measured way he crosses every space, with the precision of a man who does not take steps he has not already decided on. And he stops in front of her, and he looks at her the way he looks at operational problems that require immediate resolution. He raises one hand, and he presses the back of it briefly to her forehead. The gesture is so unexpectedly gentle that Emma goes completely still. "You have a fever," he says, as if this is a report, as if this is a piece of information being delivered in a meeting. His voice is perfectly level. His face is perfectly composed. And yet his hand does not move away immediately, which is not a thing that features in the delivery of operational reports. "It's fine," she says again, smaller this time. "I just need to finish the corridor." "You need to stop," he says. And then, before she can produce another version of fine, "I'm calling a doctor." That's really not Emma. It is the first time since the kitchen that he has used her name. Not her title, not the formal designation of her position. Her name, in the voice he uses only for her, low and specific, the way a person says a word they have been thinking about for days. She closes her mouth. He calls the doctor himself, not through Mrs. Park, not through his assistant. He takes his phone from his pocket and he makes the call directly, standing in the corridor while Emma sits on the bench at the corridor's end where he has directed her to sit, and he gives the doctor the address and says "come now" and hangs up without ceremony. He moves Emma to the guest room on the second floor, the good one, with the south-facing window and the wide bed and the quality of light that comes through in the afternoon like something decided, and he brings her water with his own hands. Mrs. Park hovers in the doorway with the expression of someone witnessing something she has been waiting 8 years to see and is determined not to say anything about in case saying anything about it makes it stop. The doctor comes. The doctor goes. Fever, rest, fluids, 2 days minimum. Emma lies in the guest room bed feeling the specific helplessness of a person who does not know how to be still and is being required to be still, and she listens to the house settle into its evening routine around her. Seo-jin does not come in. This is what she expects. This is consistent with every version of him she has been given. The man who solves problems from a distance, who funds surgeries without names, who fires guards without explanations, who stocks kitchens with familiar spices without acknowledgement. He has done the operational thing. He called the doctor. He provided the room. He has resolved the situation as a situation, and now he will return to the report from Busan and the silence he has been so carefully maintaining, and she will be managed like everything else he manages from behind his walls. She falls asleep telling herself this. She wakes at midnight. The fever has broken slightly, enough that she is aware of being in an unfamiliar room, aware of the quality of the dark, aware of a particular stillness in the house that is somehow different from the usual stillness. She lies still for a moment. Then she gets up, slowly, and she wraps the blanket from the bed around her shoulders, and she goes to the door and opens it. He is in the chair in the hallway, not standing, not passing. In the chair that sits against the wall opposite the guest room door, a decorative chair, really, the kind that exists in houses like this one for aesthetic purposes rather than for anyone to actually sit in. And he is in it with a report open on his lap and his head dropped slightly forward and his eyes closed. He is asleep. The report is from Busan. Emma stands in the doorway in her blanket and she looks at him for a long time. She looks at the report on his lap and the angle of his head and the way he is sitting in a decorative chair in a hallway because he did not go in. He did not cross the line of her door, did not insert himself into her space, did not make his presence something she would have to respond to or manage, but he also did not leave. He stayed. He stayed in a chair in the hallway for however many hours it has been since the doctor left, and she fell asleep, reading a report from Busan or pretending to read a report from Busan. And he fell asleep in the chair, because his body eventually demanded what his discipline refused to concede, and he is here, present, outside her door, in the particular way of a person who has found the one compromise between staying and not imposing. She stands in the doorway for a long time. He looks human, young, not 32 carrying 40, but actually young. The way people look when sleep takes the performance off their faces and leaves just the person underneath. She can see, in the slack lines of his sleeping face, the boy who once chased his father through these hallways laughing. The person who was there before the decision. The person who is still there, it turns out, under 8 years of marble and silence. She gets a second blanket from the linen shelf inside the guest room. She crosses the hallway very quietly. She lays the blanket over him. Careful, unhurried, the way she does everything she means. She stands there for a moment afterward, close enough to see the slight crease at the corner of his closed eyes that will be a laugh line someday, if he ever lets himself laugh. And she thinks, somewhere inside all of this, there is a person who just wants somebody to make sure he doesn't get cold. She goes back to her room. She closes the door. She gets back into bed. When Seo-jin wakes at 3 a.m., it is to the awareness of a blanket he did not put on himself. He sits completely still for a moment. The guest room door is closed. The hallway is quiet. The blanket is the one from the shelf inside the guest room, which means she got up, which means she saw him, which means she did not wake him or ask him to leave or look at him through him like furniture. She covered him. He sits in the chair with the blanket and the Busan report and the particular sensation of a man whose last wall has just developed a crack that no amount of strategy is going to repair. Neither of them mentions it the next morning. Not a word. Not a look that lasts longer than necessary. They move through the house in the usual way, or almost the usual way, and the only observable difference is that when Emma passes the corridor where the mopping didn't get finished, she finishes it without comment. And when Seo-jin passes the kitchen at the time she usually hums, he slows his pace almost imperceptibly. Almost. But both of them feel it. The thing that happened in a hallway in the dark, the blanket exchanged without words, the staying that was not staying but was everything staying means. The beginning of the end of every wall they have ever built, arriving not with drama or declaration, but with the quiet inevitability of something that was always going to happen. In a house where two people who were very good at being alone kept finding each other in the corridors at inconvenient hours, and neither one of them could find a good enough reason to leave. The morning after the blanket, Seo-jin is at the kitchen table. This requires a moment of acknowledgement because it has not happened before. Not once in the 8 years he has occupied this house. He takes his coffee in his office. He takes his meals in deliberate isolation. The kitchen is Mrs. Park's domain and the staff's domain, and a room he passes through on his insomnia route without stopping. That is simply the way things are in this house. That is the way things were. He is sitting at the kitchen table when Emma comes downstairs, still moving carefully the way people move when a fever has recently broken and the body is reminding them it exists. She stops in the doorway. He does not look up from the document he is reading. But the second cup is there, on the table across from him. Her cup, the right size, the right temperature if she sits down now, made exactly the way she takes it, which he knows because he has always known, because he files everything away, and this is the information that turns out to matter most. Emma sits down. She wraps both hands around the cup. He turns a page. "Good morning," she says. A beat. Long enough to be a decision. "Good morning," Seo-jin says. It is the first time he has said it. Not just first today, first ever. In 8 months of shared mornings in this house, he has never once offered a good morning unprompted. Emma takes a sip of her coffee. It is perfect. She looks at him over the rim of the cup, and he is reading his document with the composed expression of a man who controls a criminal empire before 8 a.m. And yet he is sitting in the kitchen, with 2 cups, and he said good morning first. "You know," Emma says conversationally, "most people start with good morning and work their way up to please don't leave. You did it completely backwards." He turns another page. "I do most things my own way." She takes another sip. "We're going to work on that." Something moves at the corner of his mouth. Outside, Seoul is waking up. The morning light comes through the kitchen window in long pale strips that fall across the table between them, across the 2 cups, across the document he is pretending to read, and the woman who is pretending she is not memorizing this moment. It is the most ordinary scene in the world. It is the most extraordinary thing that has ever happened in this house. And neither of them says so, because some things are too new and too real to be named without the risk of startling them into disappearing. The days that follow have a different quality to them. Not dramatic. Nothing about this story happens dramatically, which is precisely why it lands the way it does. The shift is in the small things, the way it always is with real things. He appears in rooms she is in without the pretense of having operational reasons to be there. She stops performing the version of herself that doesn't hum. Mrs. Park watches all of it with the quiet satisfaction of someone who has been patient for 8 years and is now being rewarded for it. One evening, Emma is trying to teach him a Korean phrase she has learned. One of the informal ones, the kind that doesn't appear in textbooks. And she watches his face do the corner of the mouth thing when he uses it correctly in a sentence, and she points at him and says, "There. That. Do that more." And he looks at her with the expression that has no name in his vocabulary yet, the one that means you are the specific undoing of everything I built. And he says nothing, but he does not look at the ceiling. He looks at her. Another evening they end up in the corridor at midnight, both of them unable to sleep, both of them being honest about it for the first time, both of them standing in the corridor with tea that Emma made and that Seo-jin accepted without the usual strategic distance, and they talk. Not about the empire, not about the household, about Seoul in the early morning when the streets are empty and the city belongs only to insomniacs and street vendors. About Nigeria, briefly, carefully, Emma describing Port Harcourt in the rainy season in a way that makes it sound like somewhere he might actually want to see. About the particular loneliness of being responsible for things that are larger than you. They don't say that last part out loud. They don't need to. They are both fluent in what is meant beneath what is said. And then, 3 days after the good morning, Emma is standing on the second step of a ladder reaching for a shelf that she absolutely could have asked one of the staff to reach, and Seo-jin walks in and without a word puts one hand on the ladder to steady it and the other at her waist to make sure she doesn't fall, and she looks down at him and he looks up at her, and they are very close and neither of them moves. "I have it," Emma says. "I know," he says. He doesn't move. "You can let go." "Yes." He doesn't. Emma looks at him for a long moment. She is on the second step, which means she is slightly above eye level with him, which means she is looking down at his face, and he is looking up at hers, and there is nowhere to deflect to, no joke arriving in time, no performance available. Just the two of them and the 4 inches of air between them and 8 months of everything that has been building in that air. Seo-jin. "Yes. Are you going to do something, or are we going to stay like this forever because I genuinely have other shelves to clean?" He reaches up. He takes her hand off the shelf. He helps her down from the ladder, 1 step, and she is standing right in front of him, and there is no distance left, none of the careful strategic distance that has been his primary tool for 8 months. None of the ceiling looking and your staff and the clinical dismantling of warmth. Just him and her and the specific look on his face of a man who has run out of reasons not to. He cups her face the way he did in the corridor the night he asked her not to leave. Gently, deliberately, like a question asked with both hands. "I'm going to get things wrong," he says quietly. "I know. I'm going to be too quiet when you need words. I know that too. And you're going to make jokes when I need you to be serious." "Absolutely," Emma confirms. "That's not going to change. Full disclosure." He looks at her. "I don't have a word for what this is." "I do," Emma says. "What?" "Terrifying," she says. "Completely terrifying. A beat. Also maybe the best thing that's happened to me since I got here." He looks at her. "Maybe. Definitely," she corrects. Quietly, like something she has been keeping safe for a long time and is only now allowing outside. He kisses her. Not urgently. Not desperately. The way he does everything. With intention, with the particular certainty of a decision that has been building for 8 months and has finally, fully, been made. Emma's hand finds his chest. He pulls her closer. When they break apart, she keeps her eyes closed for a moment, and the expression on her face is the expression of a person who is not expecting to feel something this large and is currently recalibrating. "Okay," she says, slightly breathless. "Okay, that was." "Yes," he agrees. "We should have." "Yes." 8 months, Seo-jin. "I'm aware." 8 months. "Emma. I'm just saying." He kisses her again. She stops talking. For once. And Mrs. Park, who has been in the corridor outside with a linen basket she has been holding for 7 minutes without going anywhere, allows herself one small, private smile before she walks in the other direction and leaves them to it. But this is not a story that lets people have nice things without cost. This is a story that knows that real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that means something, has to survive something before it earns its ending. And the thing it has to survive is already in motion. His underboss has been moving carefully, the way intelligent, dangerous people always move, incrementally, with patience, covering each step before taking the next one. He has spent weeks after the kitchen comment gathering information. Not about Seo-jin, about Emma, her full name, her visa status, her brother, her family in Nigeria, the financial trail of a surgery that was funded by an anonymous transfer that anyone with access to the right accounts could trace back to their source. He builds a file, and then he does the thing that costs Emma the safety she did not know she had. He leaks it, not to the police, to a rival faction. The specific rivals who understand that the most effective way to move against Kang Seo-jin is not through his empire, but through the one thing his empire cannot protect. The thing he loves. Emma finds out on a Tuesday morning. She has gone to the small grocery 2 streets away. The one she goes to because it carries the specific brand of tea she likes, and because the walk there and back is the 20 minutes of the day that belongs only to her. A man approaches her outside. Well-dressed. Pleasant. The specific pleasantness of someone about to say something awful and wanting to be remembered as having been civil about it. He tells her who Seo-jin is. Not the version she knows. The cold employer, the silent funder of surgeries, the man with the blanket and the 2 cups of coffee and the corner of the mouth thing. The full version. The empire. The blood and the history of it. The bodies. Not many, but enough. And her name is now in a file that belongs to people who collect files on people connected to Kang Seo-jin for the specific purpose of using those people as leverage. She is a target. She has been made a target. And the man who made her one is not Seo-jin. She comes back to the house. She goes to her room. She closes the door. She sits on the edge of the bed for a long time with her hands in her lap, and the specific expression of a person whose mind is working very fast through a set of conclusions they do not want to reach. Then she gets her suitcase from under the bed, and she starts to pack. She is very convincing about it. The argument she is making to herself is excellent, logical, practical, correct on every factual point. She has Kofi to think about. She has a family that depends on her being intact and functional and not involved in the business of rival crime factions in a country that is not her own. She came here with one suitcase, and she can leave with one suitcase, and she will be fine. She is always fine. Somebody has to be fine, and it has always been her. She is also crying. Not the quiet utility room tears. Not the professional tears she cried into her pillow on the Sunday nights when the homesickness was loudest. These are the ugly kind. The kind that come from somewhere deeper than exhaustion, deeper than fear, from the specific region of a person's chest where the things they were not supposed to want have been quietly living for months. She is leaving something that matters. She knows she is leaving something that matters. And knowing it is not enough to make her stop packing because the fear is also real and the danger is also real, and she has never in her life been able to justify choosing herself when the cost of doing so was paid by someone she loves. Mrs. Park finds her. The old woman does not knock loudly. She opens the door the way she does everything, with the quiet authority of someone who has earned the right to walk through doors. She sees the suitcase. She sees Emma's face. She sits down on the edge of the bed and she takes Emma's hands in both of hers, and for a long moment, she simply sits there, holding them, the way someone holds something they are afraid will fly away. Then she says, "In 8 years, that boy has not once sat outside anyone's door." Emma goes still. "He sat outside yours for 4 hours," Mrs. Park says. Simply, without drama, the way true things are said by people who have been keeping them for the right moment. "I have worked for the Kang family since before he could walk. I have watched that boy become what he is. I have watched what it cost him." She pauses. "I have never seen him sit outside anyone's door. Not once. Not for anyone." She pats Emma's hands. Stands. Leaves. Emma sits with her half-packed suitcase and the wreckage of her very convincing argument for leaving. She sits with the water glass in the dark of the utility room and the surgery funded without a name and the spices in the cabinet and the dismissed guard and the chair in the hallway and the blanket she placed on a sleeping man and the 2 cups of coffee on a kitchen table where there was only ever 1 cup before and the first time, he said good morning like it was a decision. She sits with all of it. She cannot sleep. At midnight, she picks up her bag, packed, zipped, ready, and she goes to the hallway because she has decided that leaving in the dark will be cleaner, less of a scene, the kind of exit that does not require anyone to witness it. She will be fine. She tells herself this on every step down the staircase. She will be fine. She is always fine. She reaches the ground floor. He is there. Kang Seo-jin is standing in the hallway between her and the front door. He is not blocking her. There is room to pass on either side of him. She could walk right by him. They both know she could. He is simply standing there in the dark of his own hallway with his hands at his sides and an expression on his face that she has never seen before and will never entirely be able to describe afterward. It is the expression of a man who has run out of walls. She stops. They look at each other across the hallway, and 8 months of everything unsaid fills the space between them. Every ceiling look and cold word and anonymous kindness and corporate sir and good morning and 2 cups and first kiss and every moment in between, all of it present and enormous and finally impossible to manage from a distance. You should go, he says. His voice is low, not cold. Something raw underneath the control, a frequency she has never heard from him before, like the sound a structure makes when it is under more pressure than it was designed to hold. Emma stares at him. Then why are you standing in my way? I'm not. He isn't. There is room. She could leave. I'm not blocking you. Seo-jin. The first time she has used his name without the title since the night everything shifted. It lands on him the way it always does, differently, specifically, like something with weight. He goes very still. Your world is not safe. I know that. I know what you are. I know what your name costs. She sets her bag down on the floor. Not because she has decided to stay. Because this conversation deserves her full attention and she cannot give it while she is holding the weight of everything she was about to walk away from. But I also know what you did. You paid for my brother's surgery. You fired a guard for speaking to me with disrespect. You stocked my kitchen with spices from home. You sat outside my door for 4 hours when I was sick and you didn't come in. You just stayed. Every single time you showed me something real and then you took it back. You said terrible things on purpose. You made yourself into the monster so I would keep my distance. She looks at him steadily with the eyes of a woman who has been paying attention to every single thing he has ever done and has understood all of it. I know what you were doing. I'm not stupid. I was protecting you, he says. From what? The words come out of him like something breaking loose from a long-held anchor, slowly, at real cost, with the specific sound of a man saying the true thing for the first time after years of managing the true thing into silence. From me. From this. From becoming someone that people who want to hurt me can use to do it. Emma. Her name again. Different every time. Like he is still learning the full weight of it. People who stand close to me get hurt. That is not a metaphor. That is a pattern I have watched happen, and I will not. I cannot watch it happen to you. Emma is quiet for a long moment. Then, that, she says softly, is the most you have ever said to me at one time. He blinks. Something almost happens at the corner of his mouth. I counted, she says. Her eyes are bright and not entirely from humor, and they both know it. I'm scared too. I want you to know that. I'm terrified. Your world is enormous, and I came here with one suitcase and a brother to save, and I was not supposed to. She stops. You were not supposed to what? She looks at him. I was not supposed to want to stay. And that is where we leave them. Emma's bag on the floor. Seo-jin standing in the hallway with no walls left. 8 months of warm water glasses and desk drawers and blankets in the dark, and 2 cups of coffee and the corner of a mouth that finally learned how to move. All of it hanging in the air between 2 people who came into each other's lives as employer and employee and became, somewhere in the quiet of a house that used to echo with only silence, each other's reason to stop performing. She was not supposed to want to stay. He was not supposed to want her to. And yet, you will have to come back for part 2 to find out what happens next. Whether she stays. Whether he finally says the words out loud instead of funding them anonymously and filing them in desk drawers. Whether Kang Seo-jin, the most feared man in Seoul, the man who looked at ceilings and made guards disappear and sat in decorative hallway chairs for 4 hours, is capable of becoming the thing Emma needs most. Not a protector, not a provider, simply a person who stays. You already know what she is capable of. She told you on the first day. She is always fine. Somebody has to be. The question part 2 answers is whether she finally, after 26 years of being fine for everyone else, gets to be something better than fine for herself. Before you go, here is what this story is really about underneath the crime empire and the slow burn and the corner-of-the-mouth thing that we have all become unreasonably invested in. It is about the masks we wear to survive. Emma's laughter and Seo-jin's coldness are the same thing wearing different faces. Armor built by people who got hurt at the wrong age in the wrong way and decided, without fully deciding, that feeling things openly was too expensive. Most of us know at least one of these people. Many of us are one of these people. The lesson underneath their story is not that love fixes this. It is that the right person makes the armor feel heavier than it used to. Makes you aware, for the first time, of what it costs to keep wearing it every single day. It is about the difference between solving someone and witnessing them. Seo-jin's first instinct is always to fund the problem, remove the obstacle, eliminate the threat. Emma does not want to be funded or managed or solved. She wants someone to sit in a chair outside her door and still be there when she opens it at midnight. The most profound thing one human being can offer another is not rescue. It is presence. It is the willingness to stay in the hard thing without an agenda. It is about worthiness, the quiet lie both of them are living. Emma believes she is only worth what she can give. Seo-jin believes he is too broken to deserve anything good. These are lies that feel like truth because they have been rehearsed for so long, they have become fluent. But lies spoken long enough in the dark do not become facts. They become habits. And habits, unlike truths, can be unlearned, slowly, imperfectly, in kitchens and corridors and hallways at midnight, by people who are willing to try. It is about the courage of softness. In a world that rewarded his coldness and her unbreakable strength, the bravest thing either of them does in this entire story is not fight or survive or outmaneuver. It is the small, enormous, terrifying choice to be tender. A glass of warm water in the dark. A blanket on a sleeping man. A bag set down on a hallway floor instead of carried out the door. These are the moments that cost the most, and mean the most, and last the longest. And finally, it is about home. Not the place. The person. Emma came to Seoul to save her family and found, in the coldest house in the city, the first place in her life where someone looked at her real face and did not ask her to put the other one back on. Seo-jin has lived in his house for 8 years and never once inhabited it. Until a woman arrived with one suitcase and started reorganizing things and naming guards and humming in kitchens and making the silence take the specific shape of her. Home is not where you are from. Home is where someone knows you, actually knows you, the tired version and the funny version and the 2 a.m. utility room version, and stays anyway. They both found it in the last place either of them expected. If this story found something in you, if Emma's humor made you laugh while something in your chest hurt a little, if Seo-jin's silence made you think of someone who loves in actions because words are too expensive, if the blanket in the hallway or the 2 cups of coffee or the first good morning got you in the way, quiet things always get you the hardest, then this story did exactly what it was built to do. It reminded you that the people who are always fine need someone to ask twice. That the people who go cold when they are scared are not cold all the way through. That love is not always loud. Sometimes love is a glass of warm water in the dark and a name kept in a desk drawer and 4 hours in a hallway chair and not saying the words yet, but absolutely, absolutely staying. Thank you for spending this hour with Emma and Seo-jin. Thank you for every like, every comment, every subscribe that tells this channel these stories are worth telling. Thank you for being the kind of person who watches a 1-hour story about 2 lonely people finding each other in a cold house in Seoul and feels it like it happened to someone you know. Maybe it did. Part 2 is coming. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now, so you are here when it arrives. Because she set her bag down, and he is still standing in the hallway, and neither of them has moved yet. The best part is still ahead.